Welcome, friends. Have you ever been disappointed by a guitar? Have you ever been disappointed by a guitar you bought? And what was the reason? Was it because it was not a good guitar? Or was it because you didn't like it? Or was it because you decided for whatever reason you wanted to move it on and then figured out very quickly that this was not only going to be difficult to sell or trade, but nearly impossible. Nearly impossible. I've been trying to sell or trade this guitar for so many months now. I post it once every few weeks. Sell or trade. Wide open to trades. Nothing. Just absolutely crickets. And yes, of course, the economy is what the economy is right now. But I don't know. I just think that this thing was an absolutely terrible decision. And I feel like, honestly, I feel like this is the worst guitar I ever bought. Not because it's a bad guitar, not because it plays badly, not because it looks bad, not because it feels bad, not because it sounds bad, but because it's a brick. At least locally here in my city, this thing is an absolute brick. I can't give this thing away. And I don't know if it's just because the market is saturated and stuff like this, which I always saw as niche anyway. I was always of the mind that signature guitars really were kind of a bad bet anyway. I mean, even 10 years ago, I sort of realized that signature guitars were kind of a bad bet. But depending on which signature guitar it was, like an Eric Clapton signature, for example, sort of seems to move just like any other premium guitar. It's not really tied to Eric Clapton lovers so much. But this, Joe Bonamassa on the fingerboard, this is really super tied to Joe Bonamassa. And the one technical fault that this has, of course, is that if you tend to look at the fingerboard while you're playing, you got to get out of that habit really fast and start looking at the fretboard markers right here. Otherwise, you won't have any clue what key you're in or where you're at. It was the first thing I noticed when I picked it up. Other criticisms I would have of this, and like I said, there are very few criticisms I have of this from a technical standpoint. This yellow binding is really fake looking. It's pretty... No guitar ages like that. Like, they just don't. If you see yellowed binding like this on a guitar, the binding on the neck is almost always still pretty white. Right? You look at real vintage guitars, you'll notice that the binding around the neck is always usually still pretty white in comparison to how much this yellows. And I reckon that has to do with how much your hands move up and down and don't allow that to settle in. I don't know exactly. But it's not exactly uniform like this. That's just made up Fugazi nonsense. I mean, it's a super cool looking guitar. It really is. Personally, I would like to have a 3-pickup custom. I already have a custom, 2-pickup custom, but I would love a 3-pickup. Either Les Paul custom or SG custom. SG custom in white would be my first choice. So anyway, I got interneted. interneted a few months ago. I can't remember exactly when I bought this, but it's been more than a few months. I saw this online and I saw this on our local Kijiji and I was like, ooh, that looks really cool. I gotta have that. And I offered the guy some money and he gave it to me and here we are. And I guess I'm the only dummy. I guess I'm the only dummy locally who would pull the trigger on something like this with real money. Anyway, if we're gonna, I've decided that I'm gonna give up trying to sell this thing and just keep it as, an expensive reminder. This is never gonna gain or appreciate any value. Even if Joe Bonamassa dies, this isn't gonna be worth any more money than it is right now. I mean, of course, with inflation. There's nothing special about this. These are Epiphone pickups as far as I know. These might be American controls. But otherwise, you can tell that it's pretty much just a hot-rodded Les Paul custom that they would normally make. That Epiphone would normally have a Les Paul custom. This is just that guitar with some yellowed binding, a different fingerboard, another pickup, and some different controls. Like, they didn't have to reinvent the wheel to make this, is what I'm saying. This guitar already exists without the third pickup. And I think they might have released this guitar with the third pickup and without the really super fake looking yellow binding. Anyway, let's plug this thing in and see how poorly I can play it. But just for shits and giggles, oh my god, this is so much later. Let's pull out my number one. This is my favorite guitar of all my 10 guitars. Let's see if it's in tune. Probably is. I've owned this guitar for 5 or 6 years now. These are the strings that it came with from the store. It's the cobbler's shoes. These literally are the strings that it came with from the factory. You can tell why this is my favorite. I mean, that's rock and roll. That's the best guitar I've ever owned. Okay, Les Paul Standard, 2019. Straight off the rack. That is literally the best guitar I've ever owned. This one here, close second. Okay. Tobacco burst, Les Paul traditional. This thing rips. And then this Epiphone. Like, why would I pull this thing out of the case? Why would I ever pull this thing out of the case? It's okay. To me, this is just a regular Epiphone Les Paul custom. That's all this is. Maybe with better pickups it would sound better. I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to sound like that, but it doesn't sound anything like as good as my two standards. Or any of my other guitars for that matter. So yeah, do I advise buying one of these? Or spending any kind of money on this unless you love Joe Bonamassa and you intend to keep this forever and ever, and you don't feel like you'll ever find yourself in a financial situation where you might have to sell it, because if you don't, you're going to miss the mortgage payment. If you feel like you'll never find yourself there, then by all means, okay, buy one of these things, because you're going to be stuck with it. Oh, it's just the worst thing I ever bought. It really is the worst thing I ever bought. And I'm a dummy for buying it. There you go. I hope you enjoyed our video. I do have real videos that need to be edited. I've had a whole new computer situation. I had to get a new MacBook Pro and some other stuff going. I have a couple of actual real videos that I need to edit and put on the internet. So we'll be out. Anyway, in the meantime, don't buy this garbage.